The Australian Open now into its second week of competition, and we have a lot of big names in play. So here's a little week 2 outlook, looking at the scenarios, looking at who's in play, and we'll get today's video started by talking about, I guess, the three big names, the three big favorites coming into this tournament, and we'll get started with Coco Gauff, who in my opinion is the favorite for this year's Australian Open. She's been red hot since the end of 2024. That momentum's now carried in 2025, and she's looked great so far here in this year's Australian Open, playing so clean and so well. But there are a few big names out there in her corner of the bracket there. Possible matchup with Paula Badosa, a big power game on a surface like the Australian Open. That one makes things interesting, even though I still give Gauff the edge there over Badosa. But if Badosa and Gauff could meet in a quarterfinal matchup, that is a huge one there. That is one definitely keep an eye out for. Then, of course, the big semifinal matchup against Aryna Sabalenka, if Sabalenka and Gauff get that far. Because here's the thing, guys, right? I really like Gauff's matchups here. I think Gauff most likely gets to the semifinals there. But there's a big name out there coming up right now, later on here in just a few hours for Aryna Sabalenka, and that's Mirra Andreeva. Remember, Andreeva seems like every time that there's a major championship, she steps up her game, had a great showing in last year's Australian Open, and remember, beat Sabalenka at last year's French Open, making it all the way to the semifinals there. So that's a big matchup there. But Sabalenka's power game, guys, I mean, this is a surface built for Sabalenka. And Sabalenka is the back-to-back champ here at the Australian Open. So, again, I know Andreeva can make things interesting, but if Sabalenka keeps playing the way that she has been, I like Sabalenka in that matchup, and I think there is that future matchup for Gauff out there. And that would be huge, guys, right? Gauff, Sabalenka, the two probably best players coming into this year's Australian Open, meeting in the semifinals, the world number 1 versus the world number 3. Just all of that makes for must-see tennis. But other favorite out there is Iga Swiatek. And I want to talk about Iga now. Guys, if you've been coming to this channel, you've heard me say this time and time again, this draw for Swiatek is great. It's set up perfectly for her to make a run. And I can make the case, and I've been making the case, that Iga Swiatek is probably going to make this year's Australian Open final. Now, again, there are some other names out there, like Elena Rybakina is out in her corner of the bracket. Rybakina overall has had the better of Swiatek, but Swiatek did just beat Rybakina in the lead up to the Australian Open. That's kind of the real big one out there, and Iga is definitely vulnerable on a surface like the Australian Open. But guys, listen, she's playing very well right now. She's getting by all of her matchups in straight sets. And you guys heard Jessica Pegula say the other day at her press conference, right? That night session, it kind of slows down a little bit. It has almost clay-like feels almost. Now, I don't really know how many other players are out there really saying that. I know Pegula kind of leading the forefront on that. But let's just take that at face value. If that's the case, that's great for Swiatek. Swiatek, as you guys know, the queen of clay, won 4 French Open titles now at this point, dominated last year's clay season. And again, I'm not comparing, you're right, apples to apples by any stretch of the imagination, but just if it's able to slow things down just enough for Iga Swiatek, that makes her tough on any surface. All right, so those are kind of the big names out there here. Let's get to the rest of this week 2 outlook here and some of the other names that are in play there. And I brought one of these up in Elena Rybakina. Rybakina, of course, out there. Rybakina, a Wimbledon champion. She's made the Australian Open final before. She's still out there and a big name in play. Do not sleep on Elena Rybakina, especially given the fact, like I said, has that edge over Swiatek. But she has a big matchup with Madison Keys. Guys, this is huge. Keys, a very big power game. Power games on surfaces like this are big. This is a great matchup. I cannot wait to watch this one. I think this one has all the makings to go back and forth and could make for a very good matchup and a big opportunity here for Madison Keys to make a big run here at this year's Australian Open. Can't wait to see her and Rybakina go toe to toe. Now, guys, listen, the other one out there too is Emma Navarro. What's going to happen with Emma Navarro here? I mean, we'll see, right? She's played a lot of 3-setters so far, and there's a lot of tennis still left to be played in this tournament. I don't like those long hours on the court there, and she has a big matchup coming up, so we'll see. That's Again, a lot of question marks around Emma Navarro, how far exactly she's going to go. And then, not to mention her opponent, too, that she's going up against in her next matchup in Daria Kasatkina. Daria, big opportunity for her as the world number 9, playing very well. Again, Navarro heavy on the sets, a lot of match time there. Big opportunity for her to get a win there and advance to a quarterfinal. And guys, one other thing I want to talk about here today before I wrap things up here, and that is Elena Svitolina. Svitolina, great tournament overall here in the Australian Open. You kind of been waiting for her to kind of make another deep run into a tournament. I mean, here we are getting to his second week. She beats Jasmine Paolini. This is a great opportunity for her looking at the matchups out there. She's very much in play, very much alive, and what a great tournament for her and a great way to start out 2025 for somebody who's been such a steady player for a long time. So that's kind of your week 2 outlook, kind of the bigger names at play, kind of what we're looking out at. Again, those big 3, a lot of favorable matchups out there. I think you're still looking at those are the 3 big ones, but of course, other names out there. I mentioned Rybakina and Navarro with the match time and everything, and Svitolina. There's other names out there, but guys, the big one here, the big 3, all in play, all set up for some sort of collision here in the later part of this year's Australian Open.